Thomas couldn't believe what Nashoba had just told him. He asked her to repeat it in Apache, hoping he'd misunderstood. But no, her words were clear. The town council was planning a massacre. They were going to poison the Apache water supply during the next trading meeting, kill them all, blame it on disease. Thomas looked at the woman who had refused to speak English, who had forced him to learn her language over months of painstaking lessons. And he understood why. She had been waiting for someone she could trust, someone who cared enough to learn her words. Because in those words, she held the truth that could destroy everything. But this story didn't begin with that moment. It began 6 months earlier, when Thomas Porter first saw Nashoba. Thomas was a carpenter in Silver Creek, a small New Mexico town. He was 32 years old, a quiet man who preferred to stay out of trouble. The town was small, everyone knew everyone, and relations with the Apache tribe were tense at best. One day at the edge of town, he saw her, an Apache woman, tall, strong, dressed in traditional clothing. She was selling medicinal herbs and hides from baskets. But the strangest thing, she never spoke. Not a word of English. When people asked her questions, she only responded with gestures, nodding her head, pointing with her finger. But she never spoke. "The savage woman can't talk," the townspeople would say. "She's simple-minded." But when Thomas looked into the woman's eyes, he didn't see simplicity. He saw intelligence, and something else, fear. One morning, Thomas approached her. The woman immediately tensed, ready to retreat, but Thomas raised his hands in a peaceful gesture. "I'm Thomas," he said slowly, pointing to his chest. The woman looked at him for a long moment, then she pointed to her own chest. "Nashoba," she said quietly, an Apache word. "Nashoba," Thomas repeated, smiling. The woman looked surprised. Most white men wouldn't even try to pronounce her name correctly, but Thomas had tried. In the following weeks, Thomas tried to learn a few Apache words every time he saw Nashoba. At first, the woman was hesitant, but Thomas persisted, patiently, respectfully. "Shah," he said one day, pointing to the sun. Nashoba was surprised. Then she corrected him, "Shah," with the proper emphasis. Thomas repeated, still poorly, but trying. And for the first time, Nashoba smiled. Months passed. Thomas practiced every day. Learning Apache was difficult. The sounds were very different from English. The grammar was complex. But he continued. The townspeople mocked him. "Learning savage talk, Thomas? What good will that do?" "Maybe someday someone will thank me," Thomas would say. But the real reason was simpler. He wanted to talk to Nashoba. Really talk. He wanted to understand her. After 3 months, Thomas could form simple sentences, and Nashoba was beginning to trust him. She wasn't just teaching him words, she was telling him stories. About her tribe, about their traditions, about herself. One evening, as the sun set, Thomas asked, "Why don't you speak English? I know you understand it." Nashoba was silent for a long time. Then she answered in Apache, slowly and carefully. "Because if I speak English, they hear me. And if they hear me, I cannot learn the truth." Thomas frowned. What truth? Nashoba looked at him. Something changed in her eyes. She was deciding whether to trust or not. "I want you to come with me somewhere," she said. "And I want you to listen. Just listen. Don't speak." That night, Nashoba took Thomas to the back of the town council building. The windows were open, voices coming from inside. It was a council meeting. "Hide," Nashoba whispered. "And listen." Thomas hid, next to Nashoba, in the shadows, and he listened. The town council president, Mr. Harrington, was speaking. His voice was clear, cold. "The Apache problem must be solved. They're not wanted here. They're occupying our lands." "But there's a peace treaty," said another voice. A young man, perhaps 25. "The peace treaty is a piece of paper," Harrington replied. We want those lands. There's gold there, and the Apache won't leave. So what will we do? A long silence. Then Harrington continued, his voice low but clear. In 2 weeks, there's a trading meeting. The Apache will come, as always. They'll access the water source. That night, we'll poison the water. Thomas's heart stopped. Poison? The young man was shocked. Arsenic? Slow, but effective. Within a day, they'll all be sick. Within 3 days, they'll be dead. We'll call it a disease outbreak. No one will question it. And the lands will be ours. This is murder. This is business, Harrington said coldly. And if you're going to stay on this council, you need to be at peace with that. Now it's time to vote. Who's in favor? Voices rose. In favor. In favor. In favor. The young man was silent. Then, trembling, in favor. Thomas backed away, his stomach churning. Nashoba looked at him, her eyes saying, "Did you see?" They quietly left their hiding place. When they reached a safe distance, Thomas turned. How long have you known?" 2 months, Nashoba said in Apache. "I don't speak English, so they think I don't understand. But I understand. Everything. And I hear their plans. Why didn't you go to the police?" Nashoba laughed bitterly. "The police are part of the council. The sheriff is part of the council. They're all part of it." Thomas's head was spinning. Then why are you telling me?" "Because you're different. You learned my language. No one has done that. You showed respect. You listened. And now I trust you." "But what can I do? I'm just a carpenter." "You're proof. You can say what you heard." "They won't believe me. They've seen me hanging around you. They'll consider me an enemy too." Nashoba nodded. "I know. But there's something we must do. I need to warn my tribe. But they don't trust me either. I was cast out, remember?" Thomas remembered. Nashoba had been cast out because... Why had she been cast out? The woman had never given details. "Why were you cast out?" Nashoba took a deep breath. "Because I trusted a white man, a traitor. He told me he loved me. I showed him our tribe's sacred place. The next day he returned and planted a flag there. Declared it American land. My tribe accused me of betrayal. They cast me out." Thomas's chest tightened. "I'm sorry. So am I. But I can't change the past. I can only change the future. And now I must warn my tribe. But they don't even want to see me." "Then I'll go." Nashoba looked at him in shock. "You?" "Yes, I'll go and tell them, in Apache. Maybe they'll believe me." "But it's dangerous. They might not trust you. They could kill you. Or they might listen." Thomas smiled. "I don't have much to lose anyway. But your people have something to lose. Their lives." Nashoba's eyes filled with tears. "Why are you doing this?" Thomas shrugged. "Because it's the right thing to do. And because you trusted me. Now I trust you too." The next day, Thomas set out. Nashoba explained the directions to him in Apache, which signs to follow, whom to speak to. And Thomas, with all the Apache words he knew, began the most dangerous journey of his life. When he arrived at the Apache camp, he was immediately surrounded. Warriors pointed spears at him, drew their bows. But Thomas raised his hands and spoke in Apache. "Peace. I am unarmed. I have important news. I must speak with Chief Dakota." The warriors were surprised. A white man was speaking Apache. Poorly, with an accent, but understandably. Finally, Thomas was brought before Chief Dakota. The old man with his feathered headdress, stone-faced. "Speak," said the chief. Thomas took a deep breath and told everything. The council's plan, the poison, the trading meeting, how Nashoba had learned, and why he had come. The chief listened, silently, motionless. When Thomas finished, there was a long silence. Then the chief asked, "Did Nashoba send you?" Yes. She is a traitor. Why should we trust her? Because she didn't betray you. She was deceived, and now she's trying to make amends. And you? Why should we trust you? Thomas thought. Then he answered, his words careful but honest. Because I'm not one of the townspeople. I'm just a carpenter. I have nothing to gain from their plans, but I have something to lose from your people's lives. Nashoba. She taught me language. She taught me your culture, and I owe her something. To tell the truth. The chief looked at him for a long time. Then he nodded. I believe you, and we have a plan. 2 weeks later, the trading meeting came. The Apache came, as always, but this time they were different. They were prepared. The council, as planned, put poison in the water source, in the darkness of night secretly. But they didn't know the Apache were watching, seeing everything. When morning came, when the sheriff arrived at the water source, he was shocked. The entire town council was there, hands bound, surrounded by Apache warriors, and at the front stood Chief Takota. Next to him, Thomas and Nashoba. These men, said the chief in perfect English, tried to poison my people. We saw the evidence, and now they will be tried according to your laws. The sheriff was stunned. How? How did you know? The chief looked at Nashoba. Someone told us. Someone you never heard. Because you didn't listen. The town was shocked. The council was arrested. The sheriff was removed from office. A federal investigation was launched. And the truth came out. Years of corruption, fraud, conspiracy. Thomas and Nashoba became heroes. But for them, the most important thing was this: trust. One evening, after everything was over, Thomas and Nashoba sat together again. They watched the sunset. What happens now? Thomas asked. Nashoba smiled. Now I will learn English. Thomas was surprised. Really? Yes. Because now I trust, not everyone, but I trust you and other good people. Maybe more communication means less misunderstanding. And I'll continue learning Apache, Thomas said. Why? There's no need anymore. Thomas looked at her. Because your language is beautiful, and I want to speak it, with you, every day. Nashoba's eyes filled with tears. Thomas, stay with me, Thomas said quietly. Here, in this town. Let's make a new beginning. 2 languages, 2 cultures, but one home. Nashoba didn't answer. She just reached out and took his hand. And Thomas understood that gesture, because sometimes the most important words were never spoken, just felt. Years passed. Thomas and Nashoba married, the town changed, a new council was elected, the peace treaty was strengthened, trade between Apache and settlers flourished, and it all began with one man deciding to learn a woman's language. Not just her words, her world, her pain, her truths. When Thomas grew old, when his hair turned white and his hand trembled, he still spoke Apache with Nashoba. Sometimes English, sometimes Apache, sometimes mixed. And when Nashoba died, peacefully of old age, her last words were in Apache. Ahehe, thank you for listening to me, Thomas cried. But he also smiled, because he knew that word, because he had learned it. Thomas Porter learned a language, and in doing so he saved a life, actually hundreds of lives, because sometimes the greatest heroism isn't speaking, it's listening, it's learning, and it's caring enough to learn someone else's language. If this story moved you, if Thomas and Nashoba's story inspired you, please like, comment, and subscribe, because more stories are coming from the Wild West, stories of communication, trust, and courage. And who knows, maybe the next story will be yours.